we're all friends here, right? We're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We, got each other's backs, right? We're friends, yeah?
Mm.
Let me take you on a journey.
Oh shit, we started.
Look at these beautiful mountains.
They are beautiful.
I would say they're more hills.
But first, a couple of questions.
Okay.
Do you want to change your life?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Do you want to be your own boss?
No, because bosses are bad.
Yeah.
Good.
Good.
Now back to the mountains.
That's
And
not a
your
mountain, that's a
amazing
pyramid.
once in a lifetime opportunity to make bank and be your own boss.
That's pyramids.
That's the pyramids.
I think basically everyone knows about Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes and MLMs. But I feel like some of us could use a bit of a refresher right
Okay.
now.
Right, she just did such a good impression of a creepy scammer. That was such a good impression of one of those guys. Damn.
This man, do you know who this is?
Is that
Any
Ponzi? Is that Alfred Ponzi?
That's Ponzi. Charles
Ah.
Ponzi, I
Charles
think. Is it
Ponzi.
Charles?
Yeah, no,
I
I just made up the name Alfred.
it
I just
Charles?
assumed there was
No,
a guy
it can't
called
be Charles.
Ponzi.
In 1920, he realized that you could send a postal reply postal reply coupon, something like that. Yeah. To another country, an international postal reply coupon, and then they would exchange it for stamps in that country and send it back. Now, depending on the precise sales value of stamps and coupons in different countries, you can buy and sell and make a little bit of profit off the difference. He was looking specifically at Italy to do this. So that was, that can make you a tidy return. So in 1920, he started the Securities Exchange Company, promising investors in this little arbitrage, perfectly legal thing to do. You can still do it. Buy something in one country, sell it in another country for a little profit.
So was he a philattophile?
Go on.
A stamp person?
Oh, is it?
I just googled it.
Could be.
I just googled it.
Jen's like, I know there's a word.
So he went to investors and said, well, look, I can give you a 50% increase on your investment within 45 days using this little arbitrage scheme.
Wow.
And so within the first month of operations in 1920, his Securities Exchange Company got 18 different backers, each investing $100 into his scheme.
That's quite a lot of people, isn't it?
It's quite a lot of people. $1,800, not bad.
I can see this seems to be like these investors must be investing money correctly, and I think it's gonna go completely fine, isn't it?
They got their money back, and then reinvested, obviously, because like a 50% increase on your initial investment within 45 days is huge compared to what the banks were offering.
Yeah.
And they went and told all of their friends, and also Ponzi hired agents and paid them commission to get investments.
I can't see how this could go wrong.
Yeah, so by July, he'd made millions of dollars in investments, or he'd received millions of dollars in investments, mostly from the working class, but news spread upwards. At one point, 75% of Boston's police force had invested
Wow. Shit. Wow.
money because of such high returns.
Right.
At one point, he was receiving like $250,000 a day. People were mortgaging their houses to invest. They were getting their returns out and they were reinvesting. But at some point, people got a little bit suspicious. Can you think of any reasons why you might be a little bit suspicious?
You think that stamps are a scam designed by the government to sell glue?
Sounds good. So partly because the returns were so extraordinary, partly because he wasn't investing in his own company, and despite returns being so extraordinary, partly because they crunched the numbers, and you would need to fill Titanic-sized ships with stamps in order to transport the number of stamps that people were investing in, because they're not expensive, and you have to sell them individually. Firstly, there's no evidence that it was happening, and secondly, the overheads would be enormous to sell them all individually. The profit is just not there.
And presumably also it would crash the market as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think people would the utility of those stamps in would kind of be exceeded in number very, very quickly.
Well, yeah, investigative reporters noted that 160 million reply coupons would have to be in circulation, which was significantly higher than the actual number, which was about 27,000 reply coupons.
Wow. That's quite a lot more. That's a lot more.
So, people started to get suspicious. There was like a run on his company, but he managed to pay it, and so people cooled down. Another run, he managed to pay it. He handed out coffee and donuts, told everyone it's going to be fine.
What kind of donuts?
Down.
But it was just
don't know.
It was just a small enough number that he could just pay out.
And
moment.
Also he. Yeah, and
I want to concentrate a bit more on the donuts. Were they like ring donuts or were they filled donuts? Did they have like sprinkles
pyramid
on them?
shaped
Did they have icing on them?
Yeah, so he saved himself multiple times by paying off runs, but eventually it just got, and paying off runs with borrowed money, because the more money people think you have, the more money you can borrow.
Yeah.
So he was sentenced to 3.5 years in federal prison, got out, then was immediately and that was for mail fraud, and then he was immediately sentenced by state courts, or tried in state courts for larceny, I think.
Wow.
And he tried to argue that it was double jeopardy, but because it is technically a different crime, even though it was the same act, he initially got himself off the hook. Obviously, he didn't have any money to pay a lawyer. He was his own lawyer. But in order to set up a scheme like this, you've got to be a pretty charismatic dude.
Yeah.
So he did win, and then there was a retrial, and then he lost, and then he went to prison. And then as soon as he got out of prison, he went to Florida and just set up more Ponzi schemes. just
dude, get
straight
a job.
away. Absolutely straight away.
I've heard that Florida is a very good place to do Ponzi schemes at.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Though Ponzi is the person who has lent his name to the Ponzi scheme, was not the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. Certainly wasn't the longest running Ponzi scheme of all time. I think it was over and done with in about 8 months. Bernie Madoff, you may remember.
I do.
He made off with the money and ran.
Yeah, exactly. He took over $65 billion.
Wow.
And, fell crashing and burning in 2008. He was the chairman of the NASDAQ stock exchange repeatedly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shit.
So what exactly was the pyramid scheme? Was he just paying the people
not a pyramid scheme. Well, okay, let's...
So the Ponzi scheme essentially is, you are saying that there's this really high return on investment, you're getting tons of investment in, and then you are paying your investors interest through the money given to you by new recruits. So you can keep going as long as you can actually be paying people interest on their investments, as long as you can keep getting new money in and new recruits. And then as soon as that inevitably dries up, and then you cash out and run.
Exactly. Yeah, so pyramid schemes are distinct from Ponzi schemes, mostly because the people involved in the pyramid scheme know that the money that they get is only coming from new recruits. A Ponzi scheme keeps that a secret. A pyramid scheme, part of your role inside a pyramid scheme is to recruit new people so that you can take a cut of what they take, and the people above you can take a cut of what you take.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Pyramid schemes seem fairly transparently awful, but although, if you hear like, you can make lots of money as long as you get other people to
lose all of your friends.
Like get involved as well, you're not necessarily doing the maths straight away, but you get into powers of numbers. Like if one person has to involve 10 people, so by the third level you have 100 people, the fourth level you have 1,000 people. It's not long before you run out of people in the world to be investing.
Yeah. I just have to start making more people.
That is the
only solution.
Yeah. And they hide it in various ways. Gifting circles don't make it sound like an investment in that way. You just make it sound as though it's like mutual help, to kind of cover up the maths a little bit. There's a famous one called the airplane game, and it splits off into different levels. But you can be the pilot of the airplane, who's there like in top of the pyramid, and then level down until you're a passenger. And then once if you get the money coming in at the bottom, you can graduate out of being the pilot and you're free from the scheme. Or you can go back in at the bottom as a passenger. So that seems much more appealing, and it seems like it wouldn't fall prey to the same issues as a pyramid scheme where it seems almost infinite, but it is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
Why would you go back into the plane if you'd already left?
Yeah, the airplane game has an 87% loss rate. So some people cash out, but most people lose $5,000 or whatever it is.
That's a lot of money.
Since COVID in the United States, there's been a thing called the blessing loom, which is exactly the same thing, but they've taken the pyramid, as though you're looking at the pyramid from above, they've squashed it out, looks like a circle or like a spider's web. They call it the blessing loom. Literally a pyramid scheme, exactly the same thing, just a different shape diagram. And then another kind of pyramid scheme that you might recognize more from kind of your own life is franchise fraud, where there is a product involved, but you and that masks the fact that all of the profits are coming from new recruits and not actually from
so that's the
MLM
the
product.
That's the Nutrilifes and the
the product is just like secondary to like
Avon ladies and Tupperware.
Exactly. There is, in fact, a legal, but not actual, but a legal distinction between a pyramid scheme and an MLM, even though MLMs might describe themselves as like pyramid marketing, whatever. And that's because in 1979, one of the biggest multi-level marketing companies, Amway, it was taken to court over various claims of dodgy dealing. And it won the court case, or they had to change several parts of their business practice, but they were ruled like a legal business because they required 70% of the product that distributors bought to be sold on, and they required, in order for them to receive like a bonus, and they require you to sell to like at least 10 customers in a certain period.
Right, so that's maintaining the balance of like, it's not literally all about getting you recruits to sell the product. There is actually the product being sold to people who will consume the product to some extent on the other end.
Yeah. So according to the FTC, it's a legal business practice, even though take some UK figures. 10% of Amway workers in the UK, only 10% of Amway workers in the UK make any sales.
Wow.
In 2008, in 2008, out of 33,000 independent business owners, only 90 covered their costs. That's a 99.7% loss rate. And of those people who do make a profit, it's hard to find anyone making over like $1.50 an hour.
That says to me that the products are not very good.
They're very expensive. That's the other thing. There's lots of things you have to do as part of an MLM, and part of it is buy product to show people. You have to own a certain amount of product just so that you can kind of sell the product, you know. So even though there's technically not a buy-in to the company, that's another thing that the 1979 ruling said. You don't actually have to put a lot of money into joining the company. You do have to buy lots of stuff from the company so that you can sell for them.
About 8 or 9 years ago, I was job seeking, as you do, and accidentally found myself almost recruited into what was basically one of these schemes, where you would go round a designated route of houses and try and sell something, and it was normally like a charity thing or something, and then everything you sold, you got like a 1% of it or something, and then the person above you got a percentage of all your sales, and the person above them got all the percentage of their sales.
Classic.
And the guy who was trying to recruit me, he was like, oh, you know, I make £60,000 a year, and I've got my own, you know, my own flat, and I, you know, 60-inch TV, and blah blah blah. The entire time, he was also like doing like 80 hours a week of walking around in the rain, selling stuff to people who didn't need it. Yeah, it was really, really sort of bizarre, and it was very clearly a scam.
Yeah, really sad.
I mean, that's just what NFTs are, isn't it?
But once you put that much money into something, well, yeah, I mean, entirely unrelated to this, here's this kind of bored-looking ape I've drawn. I feel like this.
I love it. This is actually a good one.
Orangutans apes.
Actually.
Orangutans apes.
Yeah.
We're apes.
Yeah.
Ape. Oh, they are apes.
Yeah. So why have you drawn this bored-looking ape, right?
Well, I just thought it looked nice.
He looks mischievous.
I just thought, I can cash out on this. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about NFTs.
Yeah.
The reason why we all seem agreed here that NFTs are essentially a Ponzi scheme is that you only make money if there are new investors.
Yes.
If somebody is willing to buy your NFT, there is no making money without new buy-in.
You're just looking for a bigger fool, somebody else who you hope will, like, suck up the loss so that you can take the win, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did Gandalf get into NFTs? Because he knew a fool of a toque. I'm so funny.
Interesting. Are NFTs a cut and dry Ponzi scheme? Yes and no, because they also have elements of like a pump and dump. You get these just really great kind of tactics, reputable business tactics combined into one. Financial Times thing I read pointed out they're also more expensive than that. Like where a Ponzi scheme is essentially redistributive, For NFTs, you also have, well, and for cryptocurrency more generally, you have the people mining them and the huge expense that goes into the electricity costs, even when you're not looking at environmental costs and the economic costs.
Yeah.
The huge electricity bills.
Like the economic crisis happening in Kazakhstan right now, and the protest that's been happening is largely because they have cheap, or they had very, very cheap energy prices. And so when you're talking about like global finance instruments like this, basically, like they will move to wherever they can make the most money. So there were masses and masses of crypto mining operations moving to Kazakhstan where electricity was cheaper, to the extent that they doubled the cost of electricity by using so much of that country's energy infrastructure to mine cryptocurrency, which is nothing, and fucking crashed the economy. Like,
it's estimated to cost miners about $45 million a day to mine 900 new Bitcoin. A response piece, also printed in the Financial Times, argued against this criticism by pointing out that people typically hold Bitcoin and can borrow against it in the meantime. So they might hold it for like 5 years or whatever before they even think about selling it. Which to me suggests that the problem is like bigger than Bitcoin, not that Bitcoin isn't a problem, or NFTs or any of...
Fundamentally exposes how capitalism works.
Yes. Indeed. He also refers to the environmental argument as a zombie argument because
because we're all going to become zombies if
the
environment dies.
Some efforts. And also, like, miners might move to renewable energy.
I've seen people be like, yeah, the environment argument is settled because of impending changes that are just awaiting implementation. It's like, so it's not then. That's just a lie. Yeah. if that's not how it's working, then that's not how it's working.
Yeah. And also there's like moving from proof of work to proof of something, whatever. Anyway. I don't have much to say about this other than like remember the financial crisis.
Yeah.
And also exciting news. You're going to be able to buy real estate in the metaverse. So good. If you have anything to add about these two slides. Now, I feel like you're probably a little bit more capable than me of talking about why capitalism is just a pyramid scheme. But it is predicated on eternal growth.
Yes. Constant expansion is necessary. Like, this is why there's a constant cycle of boom and bust and crisis in capitalism, because capitalism, like, definitionally requires constant expansion, constant growth. It turns us all and the planet that we live on into a machine for its growth, regardless of our actual needs, happiness, enjoyment, what we actually want to be doing. And
nice.
So legally, a lot of the definitions that distinguish between an illegal scam and capitalism are just about balance and quantity, not quality. Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting about this argument that it's not purely that crypto isn't purely a Ponzi scheme because people can borrow against their crypto investments, is that it really, really did just make me think of the financial crisis and the absolute havoc that, financial derivatives, which are essentially borrowing against,
right. Doesn't that send asset. Like shudders down your spine? It's not a pyramid, like it's not a Ponzi scheme because you can borrow money against the money that is, like, for most people is just going to be lost money. Like, necessarily for most people it has to be lost money. Otherwise, why would anybody be making a profit from it? Like, where does that profit come from? It comes from other people's loss.
I did trace this orangutan.
He's lovely.
He doesn't look.
I traced him from a royalty-free image so that they can't catch me.
I don't think they would catch you.
I think he just looks a little bit. He looks a little bit cheeky. A little bit. He looks like he's gonna do a little bit of a prank.
Oh, not actually bored.
No.
Well,
You think he won't sell?
I think bored in a kind of cheeky way. That's an aspirational attitude, right? That's like sardonic.